The bullet missed Flynn Parker's head by inches, close enough that he felt the heat of it as he dove behind the water trough, his hat tumbling into the dust, and his heart hammering against his ribs like a blacksmith's anvil. 3 months working on the Harrison ranch, and this was how it would end, caught in the crossfire of someone else's grudge in Madisonville, Texas, on a sweltering August afternoon in 1883. The outlaws who had ridden in weren't interested in a hired hand with barely enough money for his next meal. But Flynn had made the mistake of standing between them and the general store when they started shooting, and now he was pinned down with nothing but his old revolver and a prayer. "Stay down." A woman's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding, and Flynn looked up to see Amelia Harrison standing in the doorway of her father's mercantile across the street, a rifle in her hands that she wielded with surprising confidence. She fired twice, the shots precise and calculated, forcing one of the outlaws to retreat behind a hitching post. Flynn had seen the boss's daughter around the ranch, of course, usually from a distance as he mucked out stalls or mended fences, her dark hair always pulled back in a practical braid, her green eyes focused on the account books she carried everywhere. He had never imagined she could shoot like that. The outlaws returned fire, shattering the window beside Amelia, and Flynn made his decision. He broke from cover, running in a crouch across the street as bullets kicked up dirt at his heels. He crashed through the mercantile door, rolling to his feet beside Amelia just as she was reloading. "You trying to get yourself killed?" he demanded, his voice rougher than he intended. "I could ask you the same question," she shot back, not taking her eyes off the street. "Those are the Garrett brothers. They have been terrorizing towns from here to San Antonio for the past month. And you thought you would take them on yourself? Someone had to. The sheriff is 3 towns over at a trial." She raised the rifle again, her hand steady despite the danger. Flynn noticed a small cut on her cheek where flying glass had nicked her, a thin line of blood trailing toward her jaw. Something protective and fierce rose in his chest, an emotion he had no right to feel for a woman so far above his station. He moved to the window on the opposite side of the door, checking his revolver. 5 shots left. Not ideal, but it would have to do. "How many are there?" "I counted 4 when they rode in. You got one with that lucky shot." "That was you, not me. I was too busy diving for cover." The admission should have embarrassed him, but Amelia laughed, a quick startled sound that seemed out of place amid the gunfire. "Well, you dove with excellent timing. Now make yourself useful and watch the left side. I think one of them is trying to circle around." They worked together for the next 10 minutes, a strange partnership born of necessity. Flynn found himself matching her rhythm, anticipating her movements as she anticipated his. When she needed to reload, he provided covering fire. When he ran low on ammunition, she passed him a box from behind the counter without him having to ask. The Garrett brothers finally gave up when several armed townspeople emerged from various buildings, drawn by the prolonged gunfight. The outlaws rode out in a cloud of dust and curses, leaving behind broken windows and rattled nerves. In the sudden silence, Flynn became acutely aware that he was standing very close to Amelia Harrison, close enough to see the gold flecks in her green eyes, close enough to smell the lavender soap she used, despite the acrid tang of gunpowder that hung in the air. She was looking at him with an expression he could not quite read, something between surprise and curiosity. That was. She started, then seemed to lose her words. "Stupid," Flynn supplied. "Reckless," I was going to say impressive, for a hired hand. There was no mockery in her tone, just honest assessment, and Flynn felt something shift in the space between them. "I have been in tight spots before, Miss Harrison." "Amelia," she corrected, lowering the rifle. "I think we can dispense with formalities after nearly dying together. Flynn." He extended his hand, and she took it. Her palm was warm and calloused from work, not the soft hand of a pampered daughter he had expected. The handshake lasted a moment longer than necessary, neither of them quite willing to let go. The moment shattered when the door burst open and Thomas Harrison strode in, his weathered face lined with worry. At 52, the ranch owner was a formidable presence, tall and broad-shouldered with steel gray hair and eyes that could pin a man in place. "Amelia, I heard shooting. Are you hurt?" "I am fine, Father. Flynn helped drive them off." Thomas turned his attention to his hired hand, and Flynn resisted the urge to step back. He had only spoken to his employer a handful of times in 3 months, usually receiving his instructions through the foreman. "Parker, is it?" "Yes, sir." "You kept my daughter safe. I owe you a debt." Thomas gripped Flynn's shoulder with a hand that could probably crush stone. "Come by the house tonight. We will talk about your wages." After Thomas led Amelia away, insisting on checking her for injuries despite her protests, Flynn stood alone in the mercantile, trying to process what had just happened. His hands were shaking now, the aftermath of danger catching up with him, but it was not the gunfight that had him unsettled. It was the way Amelia had looked at him, like she was seeing him for the first time. Like he was something more than just another drifter working for his next meal. He retrieved his hat from the street, brushing off the dust, and walked back toward the ranch on the edge of town. The Harrison spread was one of the largest in this part of Texas. 3,000 acres of cattle country with a main house that spoke of prosperity built over 2 generations. Flynn's quarters were in the bunkhouse with the other hands, a sparse room with a narrow bed and a trunk for his few possessions. He had been drifting for the past 5 years since his parents died of fever back in Missouri, taking work where he could find it, never staying long enough to put down roots. Madisonville had been meant as just another temporary stop, but something about the town had appealed to him. Maybe it was the way the morning light hit the pines that grew along the creek, or the friendly nod the blacksmith gave him when he passed. Or maybe, if he was honest with himself, it was the sight of Amelia Harrison riding through the ranch each morning, checking on the cattle with the foreman, her spine straight and her manner no nonsense. She was 23 to his 25, but the gulf between a ranch owner's daughter and a hired hand might as well have been the Grand Canyon. That evening, Flynn washed up as best he could and put on his only clean shirt before walking to the main house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed too beautiful for a day that had nearly ended in bloodshed. He knocked on the heavy oak door, his stomach tight with nerves. A housekeeper answered, an older Mexican woman named Rosa who had always been kind to him. She smiled and ushered him into a parlor that spoke of comfort rather than ostentation. The furniture was solid and well made, the walls lined with books, a piano in one corner. Through the window, he could see Amelia in the garden, cutting flowers with careful precision. "Parker." Thomas entered from another door, gesturing for Flynn to sit. "I spoke with my foreman. He tells me you have been one of the best workers we have hired in years. Never complain, always on time, good with the horses. I appreciate the work, sir. And today you showed courage." That matters more than skill sometimes. Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying Flynn with the same direct gaze his daughter possessed. "I am increasing your wages by half, and I am moving you out of the bunkhouse. There is a small cabin on the north pasture that needs some repairs, but it is yours if you want it. Privacy matters when a man is thinking about his future." Flynn blinked, caught off guard by the generosity. "Sir, I do not know what to say. Say you will stay on." Good men are hard to find, and I could use someone I trust." Thomas paused, then added, "My daughter seems to think highly of you too. That carries weight with me." Heat crept up Flynn's neck. "Miss Harrison was very capable today. I just backed her up. She has always been independent." "Too much so," her mother used to say. A shadow crossed Thomas's face. "My wife died when Amelia was 15. Since then, Amelia has taken on more and more responsibility around here, running the books, managing the household, even helping with the cattle. She is smarter than half the men I know and twice as stubborn. She certainly knows how to handle a rifle. I taught her myself. A woman alone on a ranch needs to be able to protect herself." Thomas stood, extending his hand. "Welcome to a more permanent position, Flynn. I have a feeling you will be around for a while." As Flynn left the house, Amelia was coming in from the garden, her arms full of wildflowers. They nearly collided on the porch, and Flynn reached out instinctively to steady her. The flowers scattered between them, a cascade of purple and yellow blooms. "I am sorry," Flynn said, dropping to his knees to help gather them up. Amelia knelt beside him, their hands brushing as they both reached for the same stem. "You do not need to apologize every time we nearly touch, Flynn. I am not made of porcelain. I noticed. You handle gunfights better than most men I have known." She smiled at that, a real smile that transformed her face from pretty to beautiful. "My father always said if you are going to do something, do it properly. That includes defending yourself." She gathered the remaining flowers, then stood, hesitating before adding, "He told me he is giving you the north cabin." "He did. I did not expect such generosity. You earned it. And besides," she glanced toward the house, then back at him, her voice dropping to something almost conspiratorial, "it will be nice to have someone competent nearby. Most of the hands are good workers, but they have the brains of cattle sometimes." Flynn laughed before he could stop himself, and Amelia's smile widened. In the fading light, with her hair escaping its braid and dirt on her skirt from kneeling in the garden, she looked less like the boss's untouchable daughter and more like a woman he could imagine talking to, laughing with. The thought was dangerous and thrilling in equal measure. "I should let you get inside," he said, stepping back deliberately. "Thank you for today, for having my back. Thank you for having mine." She turned toward the door, then paused. "Flynn, the cabin has been empty for a while. If you need help with repairs, I know my way around a hammer and nails." Before he could respond, she disappeared inside, leaving him standing on the porch with his heart doing strange things in his chest. He walked back toward the bunkhouse in the gathering darkness, aware that everything had changed in the span of a single afternoon. The next morning, Flynn rode out to inspect his new home. The cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by oak trees, a quarter-mile from the main ranch buildings. It was small, just 2 rooms, but it had good bones. The roof needed patching and the windows needed new glass, but the stone fireplace was solid and the walls were straight. He could make this a real home, given time. He was measuring the window frames when he heard hoofbeats. Amelia rode up on a chestnut mare, a toolbox balanced on her saddle. She was wearing work clothes, trousers, and a loose shirt that would have scandalized the ladies in town, her hair tied back in a simple tail. "I brought supplies," she announced, dismounting with easy grace. "And I am not taking no for an answer. I need a break from the account books, and this looked more interesting." "Does your father know you are here?" "My father knows I do what I want within reason. Besides, this is ranch business, making sure our employees have proper housing." But there was a glint in her eye that suggested this was about more than ranch business. They worked through the morning, measuring and cutting new glass, patching the roof where weather had worn through. Amelia proved as competent with tools as she was with a rifle, her movements efficient and sure. They fell into an easy rhythm, passing materials back and forth, solving problems together. When they stopped for water, sitting on the cabin's small porch, Flynn found himself talking in a way he rarely did. "My father was a carpenter," he said, surprising himself. "Back in Missouri, he taught me how to work with wood, how to see the grain and potential in each piece. I thought I would follow his trade, but then the fever came and both my parents were gone within a week. I could not stay in that town anymore. Everything reminded me of them." Amelia was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I understand that. After my mother died, I wanted to leave too. Go somewhere new where people did not look at me with pity. But my father needed me and the ranch needed me. So I stayed and learned to find new purpose in old places. Do you ever regret it? Sometimes. When I see other women my age getting married, starting families, I wonder what that life would have been like. But then I ride out across our land at sunrise, or I solve a problem that has been plaguing the foreman, or I teach one of the younger hands to read using our library, and I think maybe my purpose is different than what people expect. Maybe that is all right." Flynn looked at her, this woman who defied every expectation, and felt something settle in his chest. "It is more than all right. It is remarkable." Their eyes met and held, and the air between them seemed charged with possibility. Amelia broke the moment first, standing and brushing off her trousers. "We should get back to work. This roof will not fix itself." Over the next 2 weeks, they finished the cabin repairs. Amelia came by most mornings, always with a practical excuse but staying longer each time. They talked about everything and nothing, discovering shared opinions on literature and differing views on politics, debating good-naturedly while they worked. Flynn learned that Amelia had taught herself to play piano from books, that she could speak passable Spanish from working with the ranch hands, that she had a fierce protective streak for anyone she considered under her care. She learned that Flynn could whittle intricate figures from scraps of wood, that he had read more books than most educated men she knew, that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her by surprise and made her laugh in ways she had not laughed in years. The other ranch hands noticed, of course. Comments flew around the bunkhouse, some good-natured, others edged with jealousy. Flynn ignored them, but he was aware of the precarious position he was in. One wrong move, one assumption too far, and he could lose everything he was building here. Thomas noticed too, though he said nothing directly. But Flynn caught the rancher watching them sometimes, his expression unreadable, and it made him cautious. He began making excuses when Amelia suggested they work on projects together, putting deliberate distance between them even as it pained him to do so. Amelia confronted him about it one evening when she found him in the barn, treating a horse's injured leg. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the open doors, and they were alone except for the quiet sounds of animals settling for the night. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked without preamble. Flynn did not look up from wrapping the horse's leg. "No." "Then why are you avoiding me?" "I am not avoiding you, Flynn." She moved closer, and he could smell the lavender soap again, could feel the warmth of her presence. "Do not lie to me. We are past that." He finished with the horse and finally met her eyes. "People are talking, Amelia, about you spending time with a hired hand. I do not want to damage your reputation. I do not care what people say. You should. You have to live in this town, build a life here. I am just passing through." Her face changed, hurt flashing across it before she mastered her expression. "Is that what you think? That you are just passing through?" "I am a drifter, Amelia. I have been moving from town to town for 5 years. What else would I be? You could be someone who stays, someone who builds a life instead of always running from his grief." Her voice was gentle but firm. You have a home now, Flynn. You have work you are good at, people who respect you. You have me if you want." The last words hung between them, brave and vulnerable. Flynn's heart was pounding so hard he was certain she could hear it. "You are the boss's daughter. I am a woman who makes her own choices. And I choose to spend time with you because you see me. Not the ranch, not the money, not the convenient wife I would make for some ambitious man. You see who I actually am, and you seem to like that person." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the pulse beating in her throat. "I like who I am when I am with you, Flynn. I like who you are. Is that not enough?" He wanted to say yes. He wanted to close the distance between them and kiss her the way he had been dreaming about for weeks. But years of instability held him back, the fear that if he reached for something this good, it would slip through his fingers like water. "I have nothing to offer you," he said quietly. "No property, no money, no family name. Just dust on my boots and a past I am trying to forget." Amelia reached up and cupped his face with her hand, her palm warm against his stubbled cheek. "You have yourself, Flynn. That is enough for me. The question is whether it is enough for you." Before he could respond, voices echoed from outside the barn. She dropped her hand and stepped back, and the moment fractured like broken glass. Two of the ranch hands entered, discussing the next day's work, and Amelia slipped away into the twilight, leaving Flynn standing there with his heart in pieces and his mind in turmoil. He did not sleep that night, lying awake in his new cabin, staring at the ceiling and replaying her words. He had been running for so long, convinced that stopping would mean facing the grief he had been carrying since his parents died. But Amelia was right. Somewhere along the way, he had built a life here without realizing it. He had a place he returned to each night, work that gave him purpose, friends among the other hands who had stopped being strangers. And he had Amelia, brave and brilliant Amelia, who saw past his worn boots and calloused hands to something worth choosing. The next morning, Flynn found Thomas Harrison in his office, reviewing the ranch accounts. The older man looked up as Flynn knocked on the open door frame. "Parker." "What can I do for you?" Flynn stepped inside, his hat in his hands, nervous as he had never been facing down outlaws or breaking wild horses. "Sir, I need to speak with you about something personal." Thomas set down his pen, giving Flynn his full attention. "Go on." "I have feelings for your daughter. Respectful feelings, sir, but strong ones. I wanted you to hear it from me before rumors got out of hand." For a long moment, Thomas just looked at him, his expression giving nothing away. Then he leaned back in his chair. "I have known for weeks, son." "I am not blind," Flynn blinked. "Sir, Amelia is happy when you are around. She laughs more, worries less. She has not been this happy since before her mother died." Thomas stood, walking to the window that overlooked the ranch. "I have had wealthy men come calling, offering marriage, offering to merge their holdings with mine. She sent every one of them away. Do you know why? No, sir. Because none of them saw her. They saw the ranch, the inheritance, the advantage of an alliance. You see my daughter for who she is, and that matters more than any bank account." He turned back to Flynn. "But I need to know your intentions are honorable. I need to know you will stay, not run at the first sign of difficulty. Amelia deserves someone who will stand beside her, not someone who will drift away when things get hard." Flynn met his gaze steadily. "I have been running for 5 years, sir. I am tired of running. Your daughter makes me want to stay to build something permanent. If you give me your blessing, I swear I will spend every day proving I am worthy of her." Thomas studied him for another long moment, then extended his hand. "You have my blessing, Flynn. Do not make me regret it." Flynn found Amelia in the garden, the same place where they had scattered flowers weeks ago. She was cutting roses, humming softly to herself, and she looked up with a guarded expression when she heard him approach. She had been hurt by his words in the barn, he realized, hurt by what she interpreted as rejection. "I talked to your father," he said without preamble, her hand stilled on the roses. "About what? About you. About us." He moved closer, taking the basket from her hands and setting it aside. "You were right, Amelia. I have been running from my grief instead of dealing with it. I convinced myself I was not worth staying for, that I had nothing to offer. But you see something in me I stopped seeing in myself. Flynn, let me finish, please." He took her hands, feeling their warmth, their strength. "I do not have money or property or a famous name, but I have 2 good hands and a strong back. I have loyalty and the ability to learn. I have a heart that beats faster every time I see you, and a future I finally want to build instead of running from. If you still want me, Amelia Harrison, then I am yours, for as long as you will have me." Her eyes were shining with unshed tears, her smile so bright it rivaled the Texas sun. "You really talked to my father." "I did. He gave me his blessing." "That old romantic." She laughed, then pulled him closer, rising on her toes to kiss him. It was soft and sweet and tasted like hope, like promise, like everything Flynn had been afraid to want. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, feeling something broken inside him finally start to heal. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Amelia kept her arms around his neck. "You should know, Flynn Parker, I am not an easy woman. I have opinions and I speak my mind. I will challenge you and argue with you and probably drive you crazy sometimes. I am counting on it. And I have no intention of being a traditional wife who stays home and keeps quiet. I will keep helping run this ranch, keep making decisions, keep being who I am. I would not want you any other way." He kissed her again, longer this time, pouring all his unspoken feelings into it. When they finally separated, he rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably tell your father we are courting properly now. He already knows. I told him weeks ago that I intended to marry you if you ever stopped being stubborn." Flynn pulled back to look at her, surprised. "You were that certain?" "I know a good man when I see one, even if he is covered in dust and trying to hide behind excuses." She linked her fingers with his, leading him toward the house. "Come on. Rosa made her famous apple pie and she will be insulted if we do not eat some. We can start making plans." The next months passed in a blur of work and growing love. Flynn proved himself again and again, taking on more responsibility at the ranch, earning the respect of the other hands. Amelia continued managing the books and helping make decisions, but now Flynn was by her side, offering his perspective, supporting her choices. They complemented each other, her quick mind and his steady presence, her fierce determination and his quiet strength. They courted properly, though everyone knew they were head over heels for each other. Flynn took Amelia to church socials and town dances, enduring the gossip and curious stares. Some people whispered that she was marrying beneath her station, but others saw the way Flynn treated her, the way she glowed when he was near, and approved. Thomas made it clear that anyone who had a problem with his future son-in-law could find employment elsewhere, which silenced most of the critics. On a crisp October evening, 6 months after the day they nearly died together, Flynn proposed properly. He had been working with the ranch's blacksmith for weeks, designing and creating a ring from silver he had saved for over the past months. It was simple but elegant, etched with a pattern of wildflowers like the ones they had scattered on that first night. He took Amelia to the creek that ran through the ranch property, where the autumn leaves were turning gold and red. He had set up a simple picnic, nothing fancy, but the setting sun painted everything in warm light, and the air was cool and perfect. "I have something for you," he said when they had finished eating, his heart hammering nervously despite being fairly certain of her answer. Amelia raised an eyebrow, curious. "Another carved figure. I loved the horse you made last week. Something different this time." He knelt on one knee, pulling the ring from his pocket. "Amelia Harrison, you saved my life that day in town, but you did more than that. You showed me I was worth saving. You taught me to stop running and start building. You gave me a reason to believe in futures and homes and love. I know I am not what you were supposed to want, but I am what I am, and all of it is yours if you will have me. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When she found her voice, it was thick with emotion. "Yes. Yes, Flynn, of course yes. You are exactly what I was supposed to want, even if I did not know it, until I saw you dive behind that water trough with bullets flying. You are brave and kind and honorable, and I love you more than I thought I could love anyone." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him up to kiss him properly, both of them laughing and crying at once. They stayed by the creek until the stars came out, talking about their future, making plans that felt real and possible and wonderful. They were married in the Madisonville church on a bright December morning in 1883, with most of the town in attendance. Amelia wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit, the lace yellowed with age but still beautiful. Flynn wore a new suit Thomas had insisted on buying him, his boots polished to a shine but still showing signs of honest wear. He did not mind. Those boots had carried him through years of wandering until they brought him here, to this moment, to this woman. Thomas walked Amelia down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and when he placed her hand in Flynn's, he whispered, "Take care of my girl." "With my life, sir," Flynn promised. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Flynn kissed Amelia with all the love in his heart, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception in the town hall, they danced until their feet ached, surrounded by friends and neighbors who had come to celebrate with them. Thomas gave a speech that made Amelia cry, talking about how proud her mother would have been, how Flynn had proven himself 10 times over, how sometimes the best things come from unexpected places. Flynn's old friend Jack, who he had worked with on a ranch in Colorado years ago, and who had traveled down for the wedding, gave a toast about how Flynn finally stopped running and found something worth staying for. As the party wound down and they prepared to leave for their wedding night in a hotel room Thomas had rented for them in town, Amelia caught Flynn's hand and squeezed. "Are you happy?" He looked around at the celebrating crowd, at Thomas chatting with neighbors, at the life he had built here in Madisonville, at the woman beside him who had seen worth in a dusty hired hand. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be." "Good, because this is just the beginning." They moved into the cabin that Flynn had repaired, making it truly theirs. Amelia added curtains and rugs, books and small touches that made it a home. Flynn built furniture, including a rocking chair that he promised would be perfect for the children they hoped to have someday. They worked the ranch together, Flynn taking on more complex responsibilities as Thomas's trust in him grew. Amelia continuing to manage the financial side while also teaching several of the hands to read and write in the evenings. Their first winter together was cold but joyful. They learned each other's rhythms, how to navigate disagreements, how to support each other through hard days. When a harsh storm killed several cattle and threatened the ranch's stability, they worked side by side for days, barely sleeping until they had minimized the damage. When Amelia came down with a fever that terrified Flynn with memories of his parents, he sat by her bedside for 3 days straight until it broke, and she woke to find him asleep in a chair, his hand clasping hers. Spring brought new life to the ranch and new hope. Amelia announced she was pregnant on a warm April morning, her eyes shining with joy and nervousness. Flynn picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests, then immediately became overprotective, worried about her doing too much. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she reminded him regularly, but she found his concern endearing rather than annoying. Thomas was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandfather, already making plans to expand the main house so they could all live together. But Flynn and Amelia preferred their cabin, their private space where they had built their life together. The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia struggled with sickness in the early months, and Flynn learned to make ginger tea and rub her feet when they swelled. She grew frustrated with the physical limitations, chafing at being unable to ride or do heavy work, and Flynn found ways to keep her involved without overtaxing her. They pored over the account books together in the evenings, making plans for the ranch's future, discussing what kind of parents they wanted to be. "I want our children to know they are loved no matter what they choose to do," Amelia said one night, her hand on her swelling belly. "Whether they love ranching or want to go to college in the East, whether they want to follow tradition or forge their own path, I want them to have choices." "They will," Flynn promised. "And they will have the best mother in Texas to teach them to think for themselves and stand up for what is right. And the best father to teach them kindness and loyalty and how to fix anything that breaks." Their son was born on a hot November night in 1884, after a labor that terrified Flynn and exhausted Amelia. The midwife finally placed the squalling infant in Flynn's arms, and he looked down at the tiny face with overwhelming love and terror in equal measure. This was his son, his child. A future he got to help shape. "What should we name him?" Amelia asked, tired but radiant in the lamplight. They had discussed names for months, unable to agree, but looking at his son, Flynn knew. "Thomas, after your father. For giving me a chance when he did not have to, for raising the woman I love, for welcoming me into this family." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "He will love that, but what about a first name you choose? You did all the hard work bringing him here." She thought for a moment, then smiled. "Daniel. It means God is my judge. Let him grow up knowing he answers to his own conscience, not the opinions of others." Daniel Thomas Parker. Flynn tested the name, liking how it sounded. "Welcome to the world, son." Thomas Sr. was indeed thrilled with the baby's name, becoming a devoted grandfather who spoiled Daniel shamelessly. The first year of parenthood was exhausting and wonderful, filled with sleepless nights and tiny milestones that felt like miracles. Flynn learned to change diapers and soothe colic, to walk the floor at 3 in the morning singing soft songs his mother had sung to him. Amelia learned to balance motherhood with her work on the ranch, refusing to give up the parts of herself she had fought to claim. They had arguments, of course. About money when cattle prices dropped, about discipline when Daniel grew into a rambunctious toddler, about how much help to accept from Thomas. But they learned to fight fair, to listen to each other, to find compromises that honored both their needs. Their love deepened, moving past the early passion into something steadier and more enduring, built on mutual respect and partnership. When Daniel was 2, Amelia announced another pregnancy. This time she sailed through it, her body knowing what to expect, and their daughter was born on a spring morning in 1887. They named her Margaret Rose, after Amelia's mother, and she had her mother's green eyes and her father's quiet observation. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, seasons passing in the way they do when you are content. Flynn became Thomas's right-hand man, taking over more of the day-to-day operations as the older man began to slow down. At 57, Thomas started talking about retirement, about traveling to places he had always wanted to see, now that he knew the ranch was in capable hands. "You have earned this, Flynn," Thomas said one evening as they sat on the porch of the main house, watching Daniel and Margaret chase fireflies in the yard. "You have proven yourself 100 times over. This ranch will be in good hands when I am gone." "You are not going anywhere for a long time," Flynn protested, but Thomas shook his head. "I am getting older, and I want to enjoy life while I can. Amelia will inherit the ranch, and you two will run it together. That is how it should be. You are the son I never had, Flynn. I am proud to call you family." The words meant more than Flynn could express. He had come to Madisonville with nothing, a drifter with no roots, and had found everything he never knew he needed. A home, a purpose, a family that chose him as much as he chose them. In 1889, Thomas did finally take his long postponed trip, visiting California and the Pacific coast, and he returned with stories and enthusiasm that made him seem younger. But the following winter, he caught pneumonia. Despite the doctor's best efforts and Flynn and Amelia's constant care, Thomas Harrison passed away peacefully in his sleep in January of 1890, at the age of 60. The loss hit the family hard. Amelia grieved deeply for the father who had been her rock, her support, her champion. Flynn found himself grieving too, for the man who had given him a chance, who had trusted him with his most precious treasures, his daughter and his legacy. They leaned on each other through the dark days, finding comfort in their children's laughter and each other's arms. Thomas had left everything in order, his will clear and legally sound. The ranch passed to Amelia, with Flynn named as co-owner in recognition of his years of work and dedication. It was more than fair, more than Flynn had ever expected, and he was determined to honor Thomas's memory by continuing to build on what the older man had created. Running the ranch together came naturally to Flynn and Amelia. They had been partners for years already, and now they made it official. Flynn handled the cattle operations and physical work. Amelia managed the finances and planning. They hired a new foreman to handle the day-to-day supervision of the hands, giving them more time with their growing children. Daniel grew into a bright boy who loved horses and books in equal measure, following his father around the ranch, but also sitting with his mother to learn mathematics and reading. Margaret was quieter, more observant, with her mother's sharp mind and her father's gentle nature. They added another son in 1891, naming him James, who was wild and fearless from the moment he could walk, keeping his parents constantly on their toes. The ranch prospered under Flynn and Amelia's management. They weathered droughts and market downturns, adapted to new ranching techniques, invested in better breeding stock. Flynn's reputation grew beyond Madisonville. Ranchers from across Texas sought his advice on cattle management and land stewardship. Amelia became known for her business acumen, one of the few women in Texas successfully running a major ranch operation. In 1895, when Daniel turned 11, he asked his father about their family history. They were out mending fences on the north pasture, just the two of them, and the boy had been quiet for a while before working up the courage to ask. "Pa, were you always a rancher?" Flynn paused in his work, considering how much to share. "No, son. I did a lot of different things before I came to Madisonville. I was a carpenter's apprentice, a railroad worker, a hired hand on various ranches. I was looking for something, though I did not know what at the time." "What were you looking for?" "A place to belong, a purpose." "Your mother helped me find both." He looked at his son, seeing the intelligent curiosity in eyes that reminded him so much of Amelia. "You will probably search for your own purpose someday too, Daniel. That is natural. Just remember you always have a home here, no matter where life takes you." "I like it here," Daniel said simply. "I want to help run the ranch when I am older, if that is okay." Pride swelled in Flynn's chest. "That would be more than okay, son. But you have time to figure out what you want. Do not let anyone, including me, pressure you into a path that is not yours." They worked in companionable silence for a while. Then Daniel asked, "Do you ever miss the places you left behind?" Flynn thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss specific people or moments, but I do not miss the wandering, the not belonging. Your mother gave me roots, and you kids are the best thing that ever grew from them." That evening, Flynn told Amelia about the conversation. They were sitting on their porch as the sun set, a ritual they had maintained through all the years of their marriage. She leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in the silence that came from deep knowing. "He is a good boy," she said. "They all are. We are lucky, Flynn. We are, though luck had less to do with it than hard work and your stubbornness." She laughed, the sound still as captivating to him as it had been 12 years ago. "My stubbornness. You were the one who nearly ran away rather than admit you cared for me. And you were the one who chased me down in a barn and made me face my feelings. Someone had to. You were being ridiculous." She turned to kiss him, sweet and familiar. "I would do it all again, you know, every moment. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. They made us who we are." As their children grew, Flynn and Amelia worked to instill values they believed in. They taught their kids to treat everyone with respect regardless of station, to value education and hard work, to question injustice, to be kind. When a Mexican family was being harassed by some townspeople in 1896, the Parker family stood up for them publicly, using their influence to end the persecution. When a former slave settled on land near their ranch and faced discrimination, Flynn and Amelia became his vocal supporters, helping him establish his homestead and defending his right to be there. "The world does not change on its own," Amelia told their children. "Good people have to be willing to stand up for what is right, even when it is uncomfortable or unpopular. Your grandfather taught me that, and I am teaching you." In 1898, when the Spanish-American War broke out, Flynn was grateful his sons were still too young to fight. He had seen enough violence in his youth and wanted better for his children. But he and Amelia opened their ranch to support families whose fathers and sons went to war, providing employment and assistance where they could. Margaret grew into a remarkable young woman, graduating from the local school at the top of her class at 16. She announced her intention to attend college in Houston, wanting to study business and law. Some people in town thought it was scandalous for a girl to have such ambitions, but Flynn and Amelia supported her completely. "You go learn everything you can," Flynn told her the day she left in 1903. "Then come back and teach us, or do not come back if you find something better. Just know you always have a home here and parents who are proud of you." "I will come back," Margaret promised, hugging him tight. "This is my home. But I want to make it better, help change laws that hold women back, that keep people from having fair chances. You and Mama taught me to see injustice and fight it. That is what I am going to do." Daniel, at 19, had grown into a steady young man who loved ranching as much as his father did. He worked alongside Flynn daily, learning every aspect of the operation, preparing to eventually take it over. James, the wild child, surprised everyone by falling in love with horses specifically, becoming an expert at breaking and training them. At 12, he was already showing remarkable skill. In 1905, Flynn turned 47 and Amelia 45. They had been married 22 years, together for 23, and their love had only deepened with time. They still worked side by side on the ranch, still talked late into the night about everything and nothing, still found joy in each other's company. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching another sunset, Amelia said, "Do you remember that day in town with the Garrett brothers? I remember diving behind a water trough and thinking I was going to die," Flynn said with a smile. "Then seeing you with that rifle and thinking I might survive after all. I saw you put yourself in danger to distract them from the townspeople. That was the moment I knew you were different from other men I had met. You had courage but also compassion. You were worth knowing. I saw you standing there, unafraid and capable, and I thought you were the most remarkable person I had ever encountered. I still think that, every single day." She took his hand, her fingers interlacing with his in a gesture so familiar it felt like breathing. "We built a good life, Flynn. From dust and fear and taking chances, we built something beautiful. We did, and we are not done yet." Margaret returned from college in 1907 with her degree and a fierce determination to make changes. She began working with women's groups in Texas, advocating for voting rights and property rights, using her family's influence to open doors. Flynn and Amelia supported her efforts, even when it brought criticism from more conservative neighbors. Daniel married a local girl named Sarah in 1908, bringing her to live on the ranch. Flynn and Amelia welcomed her warmly, helping the young couple build their own cabin on the property. The ranch was becoming a true family compound, multiple generations working together, and Flynn thought Thomas would have loved seeing it. In 1909, Daniel and Sarah gave Flynn and Amelia their first grandchild, a boy they named Flynn Thomas. Holding his tiny namesake, Flynn was struck by the passage of time, by how far he had come from that dusty hired hand diving behind a water trough. He had a wife he adored, children who made him proud, a grandchild carrying on his name, a ranch that prospered under his stewardship. James, at 21, announced he wanted to travel to see other ranches and learn different techniques before settling down. Flynn understood the urge, remembering his own years of wandering. "Go," he told his youngest son. "Explore, learn, find your path. Just remember where home is." "I will always come back," James promised. "This is where my heart is, where my family is, but I need to see what else is out there first." Margaret, at 24, met a young lawyer named Robert Williams who shared her passion for social reform. They courted for a year before marrying in 1910, and Robert joined the ranch rather than asking Margaret to leave. He and Flynn developed a mutual respect, and Robert's legal expertise proved invaluable as the ranch navigated increasingly complex regulations and business dealings. In 1912, Flynn turned 54 and Amelia 52. Their hair had threads of silver now, their faces lined by sun and time, but they were still active and engaged in the ranch and their community. They had weathered economic panics, personal losses, family challenges, and come through stronger each time. One spring morning, Flynn woke to find Amelia already up, standing at their cabin window watching the sunrise. He joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind, and they stood in comfortable silence as the sky turned from purple to pink to gold. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "Everything. Nothing. How lucky I am." She turned in his arms to face him. "I almost let you slip away, you know. That night in the barn when you talked about being just a drifter passing through. I almost accepted it, almost let you go because I was afraid of fighting for something that might not work out. But you did fight. You always fight for what matters. Because you mattered. You matter. You showed me what real partnership looks like, Flynn. Not someone who wants to control me or change me, but someone who sees me and loves what he sees. Someone who stands beside me, not in front or behind. That is rare, and I never take it for granted. I am the lucky one, Amelia. You took a chance on a man with nothing but calluses and hope. You gave me everything I had stopped believing I could have." They kissed, tender and deep, 30 years of love in that single connection. Then Amelia smiled against his lips. "Come on. Daniel needs help with the new calves. Margaret wants to discuss expanding our breeding program, and I think Rosa is making her cinnamon rolls for breakfast. Life is calling." "Life is good," Flynn corrected, but he followed her out into the morning, ready for whatever the day brought. James returned from his travels in 1913, full of stories and new ideas. He had worked on ranches in Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado, learning different approaches to cattle management and horse breeding. He brought back techniques that helped modernize their operation, and Flynn was proud to see his son taking initiative, contributing his own vision to the family legacy. In 1914, as tensions were building in Europe that would eventually lead to World War, the Parker family gathered for a reunion at the ranch. All 3 children were present with their families, and Flynn and Amelia's home was filled with laughter and noise and love. Daniel's son Flynn Thomas was 5 now, joined by 2 younger siblings. Margaret and Robert had 2 daughters who were bright and precocious, already showing signs of their mother's determination. James had recently married a woman he met in Colorado, bringing her home to meet everyone. At dinner that night, with 3 generations around the table, Daniel raised his glass. "I want to make a toast to my parents. Pa, you came to this ranch with nothing but your skills and your character. You proved that worth is not about where you come from but who you choose to be. Mama, you saw that worth when others might have missed it, and you fought for your own happiness instead of accepting what people expected. Together you built something remarkable, not just this ranch but this family, this legacy. We are who we are because of your example." Margaret added, "You taught us to stand up for what is right, to value people over profit, to believe in change and fight for it. Those lessons shaped our lives." James finished, "You showed us what real love looks like, not perfect but real, committed, supportive, enduring. That is what we all aspire to in our own marriages." Flynn looked around the table at these people who existed because he had been brave enough to stay, because Amelia had been brave enough to choose him. His throat was tight with emotion, and he felt Amelia's hand find his under the table, squeezing gently. "We just did the best we could," he managed to say. "Made mistakes, learned from them, kept trying. The real credit goes to all of you for becoming such remarkable people despite having us as parents." Everyone laughed, and the moment lightened, but the love remained tangible in the room. As the years continued, Flynn and Amelia gradually stepped back from active ranch management, letting Daniel and James take over primary operations while they provided guidance and support. They had more time for each other, for long rides across the property, for reading together in the evenings, for spoiling their grandchildren. In 1918, as World War I raged in Europe, the ranch supported the war effort by providing beef at fair prices and employing women whose husbands were fighting. Margaret worked with relief organizations. Robert helped coordinate local support efforts. The Parker family's commitment to community and justice had become well known throughout the region. Flynn and Amelia celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary in December 1918, surrounded by family. It was a simple celebration, just dinner at the main house and dancing in the parlor, but it was perfect. As Flynn waltzed with his wife, he marveled at how she still took his breath away, how after all these years she could still surprise him, still make him laugh, still make him grateful he had been brave enough to stay. 35 years, Amelia said, resting her head on his shoulder as they swayed. More than half our lives together. The best years of my life, Flynn responded. Every single one, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones. They taught us we could weather anything together. In 1920, women finally won the right to vote, and Amelia cast her ballot with Margaret beside her, both of them in tears at the victory they had fought so long for. Flynn watched with pride, thinking about how far the world had come, how far his family had come, how the woman he loved had never stopped fighting for what was right. That fall, Flynn and Amelia took a trip to Missouri, something Flynn had avoided for decades. But he was 62 now, Amelia 60, and he wanted to face his past before it was too late. They visited his parents' graves, overgrown and neglected, and Flynn spent an afternoon clearing them, finally able to grieve properly with Amelia beside him. "I wish they could have met you," he told her. "Known what you gave me." "I think they know," Amelia said gently. "They would be so proud of the man you became, Flynn. The husband, father, grandfather, community leader. You honored their memory by living well." They left Missouri at peace, ready to enjoy whatever years remained to them. The 1920s brought prosperity to the ranch and the family. The cattle operation expanded. The breeding program James had developed gained regional recognition, and the Parker name became synonymous with quality and integrity. Flynn and Amelia, now in their 60s, were respected elders in Madisonville, sought for advice and wisdom. Their grandchildren were growing up, some already showing interest in the ranch, others pursuing different paths. Flynn Thomas, Daniel's eldest at 16, was already working alongside his father and uncles. Margaret's daughters were both attending college, following their mother's path. The family legacy was secure, but more than that, it was vibrant and evolving. In 1925, Flynn and Amelia celebrated their 42nd anniversary. Flynn was 67, his hair silver, his body showing the wear of decades of ranch work. Amelia was 65, still sharp-minded and engaged despite arthritis that made her mornings difficult. They moved slower now, tired easier, but their love had never been stronger. On their anniversary evening, they sat in their favorite spot, the porch of the cabin Flynn had repaired 42 years ago with Amelia's help. So much had happened since then, so much life lived in these rooms and on this land. "You have any regrets?" Amelia asked, a question she had never posed before. Flynn thought about it carefully. "I regret the years I spent running instead of healing. I regret that my parents never knew you, never met their grandchildren, but the choices I made after coming here, staying, loving you, building this life, no regrets at all. What about you?" "I regret nothing. Every choice led me to this moment, to this life, to you. Even the pain and loss, they were part of the journey." She paused, then added, "I am grateful, Flynn, for all of it, but especially for you, for your courage in staying, for your partnership, for your love. You made my life so much richer than it would have been otherwise. You saw worth in me when I had stopped seeing it in myself. You gave me a reason to stay, to build, to believe in futures. Everything good in my life stems from you, Amelia." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, two people who had chosen each other against expectations and built something that would outlast them. The ranch would continue, their children and grandchildren would carry on, but this love, this partnership, this was uniquely theirs. In 1927, Flynn's health began to decline. Nothing dramatic, just the accumulated wear of a life well lived. He was 69 and he had worked hard every day of those years. The doctor said his heart was tired, advised rest and limitation. Flynn hated slowing down, but Amelia was firm. "You have earned rest," she told him. "Let Daniel and James handle the heavy work. Spend time with your grandchildren. Enjoy life." So Flynn did. He taught his grandchildren to whittle, telling them stories of his traveling years and the early days of the ranch. He read books he had been meaning to get to for years. He spent long afternoons with Amelia, talking and remembering and simply being together. It was peaceful in a way his life had rarely been, and he found he appreciated it. In the spring of 1928, they celebrated Margaret's 40th birthday with a big family party. All the children and grandchildren gathered, and the house rang with laughter and music. Flynn watched his family, 3 generations strong, and felt complete. Whatever time he had left, he had lived a good life, loved a good woman, raised good children. That was enough. That night, alone with Amelia in their cabin, she said, "You are thinking serious thoughts, I can always tell. Just counting my blessings. Looking at what we built together and feeling satisfied. You sound like you are saying goodbye." Her voice was sharp with worry. "Not yet. But I am 70, Amelia. I have lived longer than many men who do the work I did. I want you to know that I am at peace. Whatever comes, I am grateful for every moment we had together. You are not allowed to leave me," she said fiercely, tears in her eyes. "We are supposed to grow old together, Flynn. That was always the plan. We have grown old together. And if I go first, which I probably will, you will be all right. You are the strongest person I know, and you have children and grandchildren who love you. You will be sad, but you will survive. That is what you do." She cried then, and he held her, offering what comfort he could while facing the inevitable truth that their time was finite. But Flynn was not done yet. He had 3 more good years, years of watching his family flourish, years of quiet joy with Amelia. He met great-grandchildren, saw James's breeding program win awards, watched Margaret argue a case that changed property law for women in Texas. He attended Daniel's 30th wedding anniversary and told his son how proud he was. In the fall of 1931, Flynn had a heart attack while sitting on his porch with Amelia. It was not painful, just a sudden tightness, a difficulty breathing, and then a strange peace. He looked at Amelia, trying to memorize her face one last time, and managed to say, "Thank you for everything." "I love you. I love you," she said, holding his hand, her voice breaking. "I love you, Flynn Parker. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." He tried to respond, to tell her she was his everything, but the words would not come. Instead, he squeezed her hand and let his eyes say what his mouth could not. Then, surrounded by the love of his life in the home they had built together, Flynn Parker closed his eyes for the last time. He was 73 years old, and he died as he had lived the last 48 years, with Amelia beside him. The funeral was huge, with people coming from across Texas to pay their respects. Flynn Parker, who had arrived in Madisonville as a nobody with dust on his boots, was mourned as a pillar of the community, a loving husband and father, a fair employer, a good man. The church overflowed with people whose lives he had touched, whose respect he had earned through decades of integrity and kindness. Amelia stood at the graveside, supported by her children, and spoke the final words over her husband's casket. Flynn saw worth in people others overlooked because he knew what it was to be overlooked himself. He built a life of meaning from nothing but determination and love. He was my partner, my best friend, my heart. And though I must go on without him, I will carry him with me every day for the rest of my life. He taught me that sometimes the most valuable things come in unexpected packages, and that true worth is measured in character, not possessions. I will love him forever. Amelia lived another 12 years, surrounded by her loving family. She never remarried, never wanted to. Flynn had been her great love, and that was enough for a lifetime. She continued to be involved in the ranch and community, watching her grandchildren and great-grandchildren grow, seeing the legacy she and Flynn had built continue to flourish. She told stories of Flynn to anyone who would listen, keeping his memory alive. How he had arrived with nothing but dust on his boots and a good heart. How he had proven his worth 1,000 times over. How he had been her partner in every sense of the word, standing beside her through joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. In the summer of 1943, at 83 years old, Amelia Harrison Parker passed away peacefully in her sleep, in the cabin she had shared with Flynn. Her children found her in the morning, a smile on her face, her hand resting on Flynn's side of the bed as if reaching for him. They buried her beside Flynn in the Madisonville cemetery, under an oak tree with a view of the ranch they had built together. The headstone reads simply, Flynn Parker, 1858–1931, Amelia Harrison Parker, 1860–1943, 2 hearts, 1 life. Forever united, the Parker Ranch continued to thrive under the management of their children and grandchildren, generation after generation carrying on the values Flynn and Amelia had instilled. The story of the hired hand with dust on his boots and the boss's daughter who saw his worth became family legend, told and retold as an example of love that transcends social boundaries, of partnerships built on mutual respect, of the power of seeing potential in unexpected places. Years later, Flynn Thomas, the grandson named after Flynn, would tell his own grandchildren about his namesake. "Your great-great-grandfather came to Madisonville with nothing," he would say, "just a strong back and an honest heart. Your great-great-grandmother saw past the dust on his boots to the man underneath. Together they built all of this." He would gesture to the ranch, the family, the legacy. "They taught us that worth is not about where you start but about who you choose to be. That love requires courage and commitment. That partnerships built on respect and equality can weather any storm. Everything we have, everything we are, comes from 2 people brave enough to choose each other when the world said they should not." The cabin where Flynn and Amelia had lived was preserved by the family, maintained but not modernized, kept as a reminder of where it all began. Visitors could see the furniture Flynn had built, the rocking chair he had made for their future children, the books they had read together. They could stand on the porch where Flynn and Amelia had watched countless sunsets, and they could feel the love that had soaked into those wooden boards. The story of Flynn and Amelia Parker became more than just family history. It became a testament to the idea that true worth is not inherited or bought, but earned through character and action. That love is not about finding someone perfect, but about choosing to see the best in someone and helping them become all they can be. That partnerships built on equality and mutual respect create legacies that outlast any single lifetime. In Madisonville, Texas, the Parker name remained synonymous with integrity, fairness, and community service well into the 21st century. The ranch evolved with the times, but the core values Flynn and Amelia established remained constant. Treat people fairly, stand up for justice, value character over status, love deeply and honestly, build something that matters. And it all started on a hot August day in 1883, when bullets flew on a dusty street, and a hired hand with nothing to his name met a rancher's daughter with a rifle and a vision. When 2 people looked at each other and saw not what was, but what could be. When love proved stronger than social boundaries, when courage meant staying instead of running, when a partnership built on respect created something beautiful and enduring. Flynn Parker had arrived in Madisonville believing he was just passing through, another temporary stop in a life of wandering. Instead, he found his forever home in the arms of a woman who saw past the dust on his boots to the good man underneath. Amelia Harrison had been expected to marry wealth and status, to make an alliance that benefited the ranch. Instead, She chose a hired hand with calloused hands and an honest heart. And together, they built a love story that transcended their time and place. Their grave became a landmark in Madisonville, visited by romantics and descendants alike. People would stand before the simple headstone and think about their own choices, their own chances to see worth in unexpected places, their own opportunities to build something meaningful. The oak tree grew tall and strong above them, its roots deep in Texas soil, its branches reaching toward the sky, much like the family that had grown from two people brave enough to choose love over expectation, partnership over convention, and each other over everything else. The story of Flynn and Amelia Parker was not just a love story, though it was certainly that. It was also a story about redemption, about finding purpose, about building legacy. It was about two people who complemented each other perfectly, who brought out the best in one another, who created something together that neither could have achieved alone. It was about courage in the face of social pressure, integrity in business and life, and the transformative power of being truly seen and valued for who you are. And so the legend lived on, passed down through generations of Parkers and repeated in Madisonville and beyond. The hired hand with dust on his boots who proved his worth through character and dedication. The boss's daughter who had the wisdom to see past surface judgments to recognize a good man when she found one. The partnership that built an empire. The love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. In the end, Flynn and Amelia's greatest legacy was not the successful ranch or the financial security they provided their descendants. It was the example they set of what love could be when built on a foundation of respect, equality, and genuine partnership. It was the lesson that true worth comes from within, that character matters more than status, that the most valuable things in life often come in unexpected packages. Theirs was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West town of Madisonville, Texas in 1883, and living on in the hearts and memories of everyone who heard their tale. A reminder that sometimes the best things in life are found not in what we expect, but in what we are brave enough to choose when we look past our preconceptions and see the truth underneath. A testament to the enduring power of love that sees, values, and honors the real person behind the social position. Flynn Parker, the hired hand with dust on his boots, and Amelia Harrison, the boss's daughter who saw a cowboy, worth more than gold. Together forever, in life and in legend, their love story complete.